In this season of Lent, during our Lenten series, we have heard the words of the cross, those 7 words, and they've been expounded upon in wonderful ways. But now we come to the last word of the cross, the last word of Jesus. It is finished. And it's easy when we consider death to think of that as it's done. Death has taken over. And that there is this great sense of loss. But I do not believe that that is the real context of it is finished. Jesus going to the cross was the completion of God's divine salvation of all of humanity, indeed the world, and it started at the beginning in creation, when he breathed life into Adam and formed Eve from his side, and they fell. And God set about his eternal purpose of restoring the dignity and the life to that which was fallen. We hear that through the story of Adam and Eve, of Noah, of Moses, of Abraham and the prophets. Through the life of Israel, through the commandments that they were given, all of those things seeking to redeem them. And in the fullness of time, his Son becomes flesh and dwells among us, so that that plan of salvation might be accomplished. Jesus goes to the cross, not simply to die, but to redeem and to save. And everything that we see in this day speaks to us strongly about this, that Jesus doesn't go to the cross as a victim of the world around him, but rather God reigning on the tree. We hear from him those words of the cross, speaking the gospel even in his agony. We hear him receive the pain of that crucifixion, and not just the nails and the thorns and all that goes on with that, but rather the weight of our sin which we have committed, which is poured out upon him, breaking him down. He bears that weight, and that is the pain that he feels on the cross. It is that sin which has condemned us, and he receives it. And as his life begins to ebb away from the weight of that sin, they reach down and they grab a sponge and they soak it in vinegar. And it's as though the last bit of bitterness of this world is pressed to his lips. And he utters the words, "It is finished." God's plan of redemption has been accomplished in that moment. St. John Chrysostom, in his sermon on Good Friday, highlights a few of the points of this passion narrative. And it's a very fine detail that he starts with. He says, Jesus says it is finished. And then, as an act of will, he bows his head before he gives up the ghost. His death is an act of will, an act of authority even over death itself. Jesus encapsulates the love, grace, and mercy of God on that cross. And it's not about him. It's about the Father's love for us, the Father's love and his desire to redeem us. Jesus did not deserve what he was given, but as an act of will, he received it. Before the movie, there was a novel, The Last Temptation of Christ. The movie was gratuitous and gross, but the novel spoke about this story of passion. And it comes down to a beautiful scene that Nico Kazantzakis portrays. And an angel of great beauty comes before Christ and reaches up and pulls the nails from his hands and from his feet, removes the crown from his head, and says, "Come down and look what you can have." And it shows the life of Jesus leading up to the cross. And it shows the life beyond that, a life of joy and family and all of those things. It would have been tempting. But Jesus looks at the tempter and says, "No." And the scene immediately flashes back to the cross. Jesus wills that this is what he is to do. He could step aside, but no, he chooses redemption for us. Chrysostom goes on, and he talks about that even in his death, he still proclaims the gospel in his body to fulfill the words of the prophets. He is hanging there dead on the cross. And the Jews, worried about keeping the celebration and not having it sullied by something as ridiculous as someone dying on their time, they say, "Break the legs so we can get this over with." And they come to Jesus and he's dead, and they don't break his legs. And then they pierce his side. And out of that side flows blood and water. And for anyone who was standing there, they didn't know about the things that would come forward out of all of this, the Eucharist and baptism. Those are signs and symbols for us. But they looked back and they saw the water that God sent to the world in the flood. They saw the blood of the Passover and the deliverance through the waters of the Red Sea. And they saw that poured out on the ground, redeeming even the world that had fallen because of our sin. Even in his death, he proclaims the good news of the gospel to the people there. Today is a painful day, because when we look at that cross and we see what has happened, we know that we have responsibility for what is done there. But what a glorious thing it is that God so loves us, that he sends his Son into this world, and by his will, he redeems us. When he says it is finished, it's not that it's done, but rather it is accomplished. Your salvation and mine has been made known. Rejoice, my brothers and sisters. For Christ has died on the cross. He has by his will redeemed us that we might have life. Yes, it is hard to look at, but let us give thanks that it is glorious. Amen.